All right, in today's video, I have a very special guest, and we are going to talk about relocating from one state to another state and what that means for your finances, lending options. So let's get after it right now. My name is Diana Filkins. I am a realtor in Missoula, Montana, and the Bitterroot here in Western Montana. And I have a very special guest with me today. I have Jariah Caissie with Novus Home Mortgage. I wanted to make sure that I got that right. And he is a rock star lender, lending in every state. Welcome, Jariah. How's it going?
It's going good. Excited to, have this conversation. A lot of people are moving from states to another state and just don't really know where to start. I was one of those people. I know you've also been one of those people, so
Yes.
I had to cover
Yes.
that today. So,
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's jump right in. What do we need to know in terms of financing and lending about moving from one state to another, whether it's like neighboring states, across
Mhm.
the country? Let's jump right in. What do you got?
So one of the most common things that I see is people, you want to move to another state, but you don't work remote and you have like a actual physical job that you have to go to in your current state. So whether that's, where I am in South Carolina, if you were going to be moving to Montana, obviously you can't buy a house there using your income from South Carolina because
Totally different.
that right. Like you're saying that you're going to be still working using that job and you're going to be commuting because you have to live in the house that you're going to
Dude,
be
that'd be
in.
a long commute with my
Yeah.
private
So
jet.
if it's a long commute, it's going to be a problem going from one state to the other. I mean, sometimes if you're living on the border, it can make sense. Like we can get a letter of explanation saying, yeah, people from Massachusetts drive to, you know, New Hampshire because it's cheaper
Okay.
cost of living. But obviously, someone's not driving from South Carolina all the way to Montana.
Yeah.
So the key is making sure, if it's a company that you can transfer to, the key would be to make sure that you actually have like a transfer approved and that you have a letter saying that you can, because then we can just use whatever that projected income for when you move is going to be. And then
Okay.
the other option is getting a new job. If it's a salary position, it's really easy. You can just go apply for a new job, similar field. Make sure you don't take any big job gaps between, because if you do that, then that's going to hurt your qualification chances as well. So,
Okay. So it's also my understanding that when folks are moving from one job in one state to another job in another state, it's
Mhm.
best to make a lateral move and
Mhm.
stay in the same field. So,
Yes.
from like a teacher to a social worker, like I guess it's a kind of in the same field, but you don't want to
Yeah.
go from like teacher to like firefighter. That's definitely
Right. Yeah, and you don't want to like switch from, you know, a a commission job to, or you can switch from commission to W-2, but if you switch from like a W-2 and then go commission, well, we're not gonna be able to use that because how would we project how much you make if you're a
right.
commission employee? So just staying in something that's similar and making sure to bring that up to what the loan officer that you're talking to, whether it's me or somebody else, making sure that you communicate your plans clearly. That's the most important thing. So.
Okay. So for somebody that works completely remote, might never work in Montana, is that going to be a problem that they serve other states even though they're moving to Montana, but will actually never work in Montana because their work is in on the East Coast, for example? Will that be a
Yeah.
problem?
So I've run into this a couple times. Now, if you're remote, most of the time you're going to be fine.
Okay.
But I have had, a company that wouldn't hire an employee if they were in like California because of tax reasons and stuff like that. So make sure that the state that you're going to is something that they're actually like willing to have be your address, because
Okay.
companies that don't want to have to follow certain rules in some states, and if they're based in one and you move to a different state, could change everything for them. So just make sure with the company that that's not going to be a problem. But
Sure. Okay.
Most of the time, you're okay. So,
And then folks definitely want to do like a lateral move. So not going from $150,000 a year to like 50, right?
I
Uh,
mean, yeah, it's probably best you don't decrease that much
okay.
for your qualifications. I mean, sometimes it can be okay to, you know, cost of living in a different state can be completely different than one. So it can be okay to make a little bit less, but just a drastic drop off that changes everything, obviously that's going to hurt your pre-approval chances. So,
Okay. So it's best to have a job already lined up in the new state
mhm.
before quitting, right?
Right. Right. And time, it can change a lot of things too. Like,
Okay.
over time you have to sell your house, so it's hard to get those start dates in order, stuff like that. But there's always, Airbnb options. I know you're pretty familiar with that, or
Yeah.
short-term rentals. Um, so just making sure it's, lines up time-wise.
Okay. So speaking of timelines,
Mhm.
how should folks navigate selling their house in one state and
Mhm.
then buying in a different state? Let's just use South Carolina since that's where you are, and
Yes.
buying in Montana. So
Fair.
how should people navigate that?
So for me, because I actually just did that this year, and I moved from California to South Carolina, and I work remote, so it was a pretty easy transition for me. But first step was talking to a listing agent in my area. So that's the first thing that I did. If you don't know one, you can reach out. Sometimes people find their buyer's agent first, so you can always ask your buyer's agent to recommend someone in that state. But that was the
And
first thing
also
that
make recommendations.
I did. Yes.
Shameless
So
plug, it's my
yeah,
channel.
that was your plug. Uh, but first thing I did was list my house. I already kind of browsed around on Zillow, found areas that I liked and knew I wanted to move there. So I listed my house, or got all the photos taken, and actually, while I was doing the open house there, so the agent was hosting my open house, I flew to South Carolina and looked at, like 15 properties in 2 days and found the one that I liked. So I made a offer that was contingent, and I'll let you kind of talk about that a little bit more. But I made an offer that was contingent, and it was accepted, and I ended up finding the buyer for my house the same day. So went
Wow.
pretty seamless. So yeah, but you can talk a little bit more about the contingency aspect of it. So
Yeah, so it comes up a lot, especially with folks that are moving pretty big distances and timing out when to sell their current home and when to buy the new home. And yes, there is a contingency where we can put it in the offer that you won't be able to close on your new home in the new state, hopefully Montana, until you have sold your home in your current state. So, God forbid, if you are not able to sell your home in South Carolina, for example, then you can't buy the new house. So, that's a great way to protect you as the buyer, where you're not holding on to two mortgages because a lot of people like nowadays just can't handle that. And it's too much. So when it comes to like lending, is it important to know how much equity you have in your current home and then you could transfer that over to your new home? Like, how does that work?
yeah, so it's important to know. I like to always ask people, like, what's the worst case? Because anything more than that, it's pretty simple. You can just add that to what you can afford in a home. But you
Mhm.
don't want to prepare and be like, I'm definitely going to net 200,000 from the sale. Only look at houses that are in that range and then find out you can only net 150,000.
Mhm.
So I always like to start with the minimum. If we get more, great. That's great for you, great for me. Everybody's happy. But if you get a little bit less, at least you were prepared for it. Um, Now it's up to you what you do with all that money. So for me, I put most of it towards the down payment, but I also knew I needed to have moving costs. I was going to need movers to go across country. I also wanted to do a couple remodels, so I didn't put all of that into the house. But you can, and you can change that throughout the loan process. So it's not something that like day one you need to be like, I'm definitely putting this much down. You can start a little bit, start worst case, like I said at the beginning, and then increase that if you end up netting more than you thought. So.
Okay, speaking of netting,
Mhm.
I want to highlight something that you said that was really great. So, a seller of their current home, how will they find out how much they net? They will
Mhm.
get a seller net sheet by working with the listing agent in your current state. So
Mhm.
that's how you figure out those numbers and to get to that bottom dollar on how much you will net after the sale of your home.
Mhm.
You try jump in if anything is incorrect. But you subtract your closing costs, you subtract your how much you currently owe on the mortgage. What else do you subtract to get to that
Um,
seller net?
that's really it. Closing costs, seller concessions.
Seller
If you
commissions,
have any seller concessions, that's one that you commonly see. And then besides
commission,
that, like
agent commissions.
agent commissions, sometimes you could have like a solar lien on your house or like a water softener system, something like that. So don't
Yeah.
forget about that. And then sometimes you can, to qualify, you'll end up paying off some of your debt. So that's another thing to take into account. Like if you want to get qualified for a little bit more, but you have an auto loan, well, you could qualify for more and just pay off that auto loan as part of the process.
That's
So
good. That's good. And if you live in an HOA and you haven't been paying your HOA dues,
yeah,
that'll
they'll get it somehow. They'll make sure
Mhm.
I mean, you'll have to be able to transfer ownership. So.
Yeah, yeah. So I do get this question a lot because people are selling in one state and then buying in another, and they're like, "Can I do a 1031? Can
Mhm.
you do a 1031?"
Depends on what you're doing. 1031 is for investment properties. So if you're,
Investment
for
properties, folks,
investment properties, yep.
not primary residence.
Right.
Yeah,
There would be no, you're not going to pay, any taxes on that. So there's no point in doing a 1031. You couldn't do one for moving from one state to another with your primary residence. So.
okay. Now, maybe we should, before we jumped into the 1031, because I've had so many questions about that recently, let's sum up real quick what a 1031 exchange is. So basically, correct me if I'm wrong, you're taking the capital gains that you get from your sale of your
Mhm.
home and you're putting it right into the new home that you buy, and you're not paying taxes on those capital gains.
Correct. Yep. That's it. But there's no reason to do it if it's a single family because you're not going to pay capital gains. So
Okay, so investment property only. Okay,
yeah.
that's really good because I get that question a lot, and I'm like, unfortunately, it's just for investments. I'm sorry. And then, like, you can't lie about the investment, correct?
Yeah, you can't. I mean, if you want to, go to jail for fraud, then you could, but you want to be honest with what you're actually using the property for. So
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Okay, good. I'm glad that we covered that because that's a really popular question
It
that I,
comes up a lot because, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, people see stuff and
it
just
is a great way to save
yeah.
money. It really is. So I can see the popularity on like watching those
Yeah.
short videos, and I can see why it comes up, but I hate to be like the Debbie Downer. Sorry, we can't.
Yep.
Are there any other like super popular questions you get as a lender
Mm,
from folks?
closings. People are always wondering about remote closings. If they're there, do they have to be there to sign in person? Because as you know, almost all of the loan process now is completely digital, but you do have to sign physically on closing day. So um, you can kind of talk a little bit about how that goes, but.
Absolutely. So there are quite a few options for closing, and your signing appointment is really what closing means. It's your signing appointment where you're reviewing all the documents, you're signing, and if you are selling, hopefully you're receiving some proceeds. And if you are buying, then you are paying for your new home.
Mhm.
Um, so there are a couple different options. One, you can do it in person in the state that you're buying in at the title office. Here in Montana, we're a title state, so you'll be signing at the title office, not at a lawyer's office. Um, Two, we have a mobile notary. So that means, let's say that when you move to Montana, you're not able to, like, you're just not here yet. Like, you're coming a week after closing. Totally fine. You can sign in your current state. So that just requires a notary to go to an address of your choice, usually your home or your work are the two most popular ones. But people also have also gone to like Starbucks or the library to meet, and a notary will meet you, sign all the paperwork. That one's pretty common, right?
Yep. That's the probably most common way that I've seen. Some states only do it like that. So,
Interesting. Um, we also have, and it's usually with cash purchases, correct me if I'm wrong, where the title office can send you your closing packet. You go to your local bank, sign all the paperwork in front of the notary, and then FedEx it back to the title company. Have you done one of those before?
well, I'm not usually involved in cash, so I
Oh,
haven't.
obviously, because you're lending,
Yeah.
financing
I do loans,
question.
but sounds
Okay.
fun.
And then another one where actually the lender has a lot of power in a-okaying or poo-pooing the idea is a remote online notary. Have you ever done one of these where it's basically like a video cam like this, and there's a notary on the other side of the camera, and they're literally like watching you sign the paperwork. Have you done one of those before?
I have not seen one of
Yeah.
those. I
Like you have
didn't.
to like hold your ID up and like put your face on it.
It's like the remote tests that they started doing during COVID. Like you have to make sure you're in
That's
camera.
exactly it. So, and like some lenders allow it, some don't. That's a question, but
I'm
there are
sure
options.
I'm sure it's going to start getting more popular, as everything's been going to more and more digital every year.
Yeah.
Eventually, it'll
Yeah.
probably be there.
So no, you do not need to go to the state where you're closing. Like I've had some buyers in Las Vegas.
Mhm.
And they're like, do we have to come up to Montana? Like, no, I mean, unless you want to, but no, you don't have to come to Montana. Just stay there and just come when you're ready. And they're like, okay, great. We're not coming there until it's warm outside. And I'm like, I've got a foot of snow outside, so don't come yet. So it's important for people to know, no, you don't have to buy a plane ticket to get here to sign
Right.
work.
That's what
It's
a lot
really
of people think. And one thing is it's very important to be, when you know you're doing a remote closing, the lender entitled to do a mail away to the notary. So it's important to be extra quick at getting all of your documents and everything that you need so that they can get that mailed out in plenty of time for them to then send it back as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You don't want to, don't, no delays. No delays for nothing.
And then our last thing, our last
Yeah.
topic, biggest problem I ran into was moving expenses, moving companies, dealing with all that. I had a disaster, so wanted to share a little bit about what
Yeah.
I learned with that. Um, First question that I had when I was getting ready to make the move was, how do I schedule all of this stuff when I have no 100% certainty that's going to close on that date? Where you're dealing with selling your house, you're dealing with buying a house, inspections haven't even happened, but you also have to book way ahead of time because they need time to get you on the schedule. So
And
What
drive
I figured
across
out,
country.
yeah. So what I figured out is you can give them a range, and as long as, each company is a little bit different,
Hmm.
but as long as you have a idea of like a couple days in advance, I think mine was 3 days. I had to let them know that there was going to be a change in the date. But
Yeah.
besides that, I was fine. And as far as address goes, I actually booked mine before I even had my house under contract that I was going to be buying.
Oh, wow.
So if you know your general area you're going to be in, you can give them the zip code, and
Yeah.
then I think could be wrong, but for me it was I had to let them know 10 days in advance, or 10 days prior to the move, which address it would actually be. So that's something that I did not know until recently when I moved across country, but that was good information. And then moving companies, that's the other thing. Um,
Don't pick the cheapest one.
yeah.
You get
Don't
what
pick the
you
cheapest
pay
one.
for.
You get what you pay for. They will upcharge you on the truck. They did it in my driveway. They asked for an extra $1,000, and then they just keep saying like, "Oh, our size measurements was off." But I'm a very detailed person,
Right.
and I knew I sized it correctly. But like, what are you gonna do? You have to move. I had to get out of there that day, so I guess really spending a lot of time, interviewing different companies, getting recommendations from people in the areas. Yeah, Diana would be perfect for that.
It's
Because I
like
made a
whoever
mistake.
you use for your listing agent or your buyer agent, probably the one in the state you're moving from,
Mhm.
ask them for recommendations, read online reviews, and interview quite a few companies. And then like planning for that cost. Like it's not like a fun cost. The fun part is like moving and getting to your new house and like but you don't think that you might have to spend 10 grand to
Mhm.
get there and planning that. And that's all money that you have to have cash. Like you
Yeah.
can't you can't finance that stuff. I mean, I guess unless you put it on a credit card, but it's not one of those fun expenses. So
Hmm.
knowing that ahead of time, and that may or may not affect like how you can play for your closing costs or may not affect your down payment. So every cause has an effect.
Yep. And
Didn't we
and
learn
that's
that in
actually
elementary school somewhere?
that's actually a good point too, because for me, I was wondering that because I'm like, my lender, they don't want to see huge withdrawals come out of my account, right? My lender was me, but not me, but my company.
Right.
So I know that like you don't want to have a pay a $10,000 bill or $8,000. I can't remember what it was, for moving while you're trying to close on your other house. So what I ended up figuring out was they charge a deposit usually up front. That's not very much. I mean, I think it was like $1,000 or something like that compared to the overall cost. And then when they pick up, they take another one, and then on delivery, they take another one. So it's not all at once, but it's important to plan ahead and,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, save enough left over for after, unless you wanted to pull it all from your savings account. So,
Absolutely. Any last minute thoughts?
um,
Don't quit your
oh,
job
yeah,
once you're
don't
under
play good.
contract. Don't go on
Don't do that.
vacation. Don't buy a car. Don't buy furniture while you're under contract. I get that a
Don't
lot. Like,
don't
hey,
have a lot of unpaid time off.
that.
Be flexible, because when you're selling your house and you're buying a house, things can shift a couple days. So don't have everything be has to fall perfectly on this day for it to go down. Don't order your fridge and have it delivered 30 days in advance. So,
Don't buy appliances because those major costs affect how much you qualify for, right?
yep. If you put something on a credit card or something like that, or have these huge withdrawals, it's just going to make more paperwork for you, or cause you not to be approved. So don't do that. That would be the worst mistake.
That is,
And the last thing, I can help you in all 50 states. Diana knows people in all 50 states.
yes, absolutely.
Um,
I'm going to leave your contact information down in the description box below. So if you want to reach out to Jariah, just pick his brain, ask him questions, and hopefully you could use him as your lender in all 50 states. And of course, if you are moving to Montana, of course, you're going to want to reach out to me. All my contact information is down in the description box below. But if you're not moving to Montana, you know what? I'm not going to hold it against you, but you can still reach out. I'm very well connected all over the US, and I'd be happy to connect you with someone like me who will take very good care of you on the realtor side. And then Jariah and his team are rock stars on the lending side. And we're all going to say, deep breaths and kumbaya because we're going to make it. It's stressful. I get it. He gets it, but we're going to take real good care of you. All right, Jariah?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, until next time, take care.